Okay.
Seeing it's 5:10, we'll call the March 30th meeting of the Tilton Northfield Fire District Building Committee to order. President is Kevin Cape, Kevin Waldron, Matt Ozier, Tim Sattler, Lisa Martin, and Chief Seatar. Did everybody receive the minutes from our prior meeting?
I just got them.
Again, I want to go on the record of how expedient Beth is with getting us these.
I'm thinking of changing my name to Scott.
Why?
You could.
Will that make it quicker?
It would make it easier.
Might help her out because she thinks I'm Scott.
Beth, it's Tim, not Scott.
So I moved the minutes from the last meeting.
Good, a
We
second.
accept.
Oh, you want a second? Need a second.
Under February 23rd meeting minutes, she's got in there that Scott noted that it should be Tim. And then the very last,
Mine says Tim. It does.
Scott noted that. Are you looking at the same minutes or did they get?
I got Scott.
You have Scott? Yeah, Scott right there.
Oh,
And then on the last page, second page, other fire station projects, the last sentence there, the word "how" is missing. Some information regarding projects, comma, and how they were advertised. Just a basic spelling correction there. Other than that, look fine to me.
I have one comment on the very last paragraph, first page, I have it printed the same as every, where it says the design process would cost coming to a total of. I'd like to strike the coming to a total of and the amount, and I'll explain that I want to ask the commissioners to review some legal matters regarding this process, because I don't believe that we should be sharing information that are in the packages publicly until one's selected.
so the problem with that is they're on the table in a public meeting, which means anyone that comes in here, what do you got?
And that's correct.
You've got to show it to them.
And that's why I think we need some legal counsel on it. Because I've been in meetings before where you review proposals and you don't, before you select, if you release information before you've selected one, it can give others advantage, and it's not a fair process.
So what if, even though it's more
Of course,
than
we're
likely
getting into
going
the
to be one of
discussion.
these that we collect,
What's that?
collect.
I believe it becomes public after you've selected. I'm not saying we don't record, I'm not saying that you don't issue it, but I believe most of the time the information becomes public after you've made a selection.
I can tell you from personal experience that with the state of New Hampshire and the bid process, the prices that are bid are public information prior to this selection, at the bid opening.
But yes, but this is not a bid, this is a qualifications. We haven't defined bid, and I'll get into that in our meeting. But the reason I was doing, I mean, we can leave that sentence in there. It's not qualified. They can't figure anything out. But sharing information that one bidder gave that the other bidder didn't, before you've made an actual criteria and selection, is basically not appropriate. And there's a legal format that you follow for.
But that's only one aspect of the decision-making process. We haven't stated that we're gonna take the lowest cost.
Correct, we haven't even developed the criteria on selection. There's a whole process that we should be following. And I want to talk about that in this meeting. So, I mean, I'm okay, you can leave that number in there because it really doesn't mean anything because it's based on something that's not definitive. But we didn't get into detail on any other subject except that one.
So does this, can this, as I see it, as I know it, this committee cannot enter non-public session,
Okay.
right? We don't have that.
Then what I would
So
recommend is that
therefore,
we
we
don't.
can't, I don't know how we can
Right.
keep anything out of public, but we have to meet in public.
So usually what happens with these, you do a request for proposals or request for information based on what you want to use for qualifications. And you send that out to prospective things, or you just post it and people collect it off of different websites and then submit their proposals. And some of the instructions can be, you can submit your proposal or response to the request for proposals with your information, and then separately a price. And then you go through all the different qualifications without looking at prices. And then once you've narrowed down what you like, then you can use the pricing to say if that meets your budget or what you're looking for. Or you can have them done together. It's different ways, there are different ways of doing it.
I'm gonna interrupt just because
We're
we're
getting
still.
off
right,
track.
We're discussing whether we're
Well,
gonna
we're
approve or.
we're in the
Right,
middle of a motion.
so,
that's
so
all.
I mean, I guess I'm okay if you want to leave that in, if you feel that you want to leave that, those words coming to a total of, and a number, if you want to leave that in the meeting, and it's fine. It's just that we didn't get into detail on any other item in these minutes except for that one number.
Well, we can't strike it,
Okay,
because it was part of the meeting, part of the.
well,
public
anybody
meeting.
can listen to it, okay. Let's not strike. The only reason I brought that up is I do want to discuss what we were getting into, and I have
Good
a
idea.
lot of information. How's that?
Like information.
Right, so all in favor?
Aye.
The meeting, the minutes from the prior meeting have been approved. Any old business other than where we left off last, at our last meeting in developing our qualifications list for, and questions for the interview process?
So the only old business was, are we all set for sending these guys to that conference?
Yes. Tickets have been purchased, everything's all set. You've received all the emails,
Mhm.
right?
Yep. So your stuff, just,
And I want to publicly thank Matt and Commissioner Silly for being willing to take that time out of their personal schedules to attend that conference. I think it would be very good information to take back to us. I think you're up, Lisa.
I'm up. Okay, I have questions first to make sure I'm up to speed. I apologize for not being here the last couple of years. But the original contract was with an architect and a contractor. Was it a combined contract or was it an individual contract with the architect?
So there was two processes. First, we hired the architect, and then after a certain point, we did another process to hire a contractor.
So they had separate contracts with the district.
Actually, there was, I don't remember seeing a contract per se,
Okay,
but there was.
maybe my next question. So,
so what plan was that for? What-
yeah.
That was
When you say previous, which,
Well, I guess what I'm trying to figure out, what was where we ended the last process, what was the deliverable? Do we have conceptual design
Yes.
plans
For,
for the Park Street?
We had conceptuals for a renovation of Park Street, a new fire station on Manville Road, and a new fire station on the Tilton School property.
But none of those are usable at this point in time.
Not even Parks.
Yeah, if you wanted to do what the
I guess I'm
conceptual,
just-
you could use that conceptually.
Okay. And the reason I'm leading into it is the next process where I think we've jumped to requesting qualifications from contractors, implying that it's a design-build contract.
There's no implication, it is.
Okay, so you've chosen that it's a design-build contract, and what contract form are we planning to use? AIA documents? The reason is they're standard contracts for design-build, and we want to make sure that we're going to use one. Because, and are we doing the construction managed project?
No, we're using design build.
Well, but it's sort of a construction managed process, correct?
No, it's design build.
Okay, so I guess what I'd like to make sure is that we're using a standard format in that contract.
We haven't gotten that far.
Okay. If we're doing design build, and we're gonna review the criteria that was submitted, we need to develop a process. And what I've seen in my review is it's not quite equitable, but we can make it that way. What my suggestion is that we come up with a design, the criteria that we will select a design build team, okay? And that's all public. We're gonna say, this is what we're scoring you on. And I have some samples. This is just a sample, you know, that, you know, I should pass the whole pack around. And it's just basic, I'm just, okay, we're gonna rate them on quality of response, project team, understanding of project, dot, dot, dot. And if price is in that list, fine. We need to send a letter to these 5 contractors that says, we're going to be reviewing your packages based on the following criteria. And this is worth, you know, 5%, this is worth 15%, this is worth whatever. And give them the opportunity to supplement their package so that we are reviewing the same things for each one of the packages. Because they never got an RFQ. And generally, and I guess we can look at what Chief's, you know, the RFQ for this project, basically they had a selection process, and they tell them what the selection process is. We did not do that. So you won't get the same information from each contractor unless you tell them, this is what we're going to select you based on. And see, here, okay, actually they did just what I saw, what I said. They have a criteria and the number of points. So we can still do that. We don't need to make somebody redo their package, but we need to give them the opportunity to supplement it. if
Might
we're
they
looking
want to
for
though,
certain-
based on this?
Why?
Well, you don't even want to be able, we don't have a basis to compare them right now.
That's what the interview process is for. We can take this criteria, say this is what we decided to use,
Okay,
and develop a series of questions based around everything other than number 1, quality of response.
okay, well, in this, it has the interview in there too, the scoring on the interview.
But all of these items we've already talked about, and most of them are on the list of questions that Tim developed and that we added to at our previous meeting.
So we're going to give those questions to the
Why would
people being here.
we give them the questions?
prepared to answer them.
Have to be-
I guess
This is-
I have a
This is not a
different,
small
I
project.
have a different perspective.
Okay.
You have more experience directly in the construction field than I do, but I've been in, like you, my entire career, and I work for a contractor. And I have presented a lot of different sales proposals, 40 years that I've been doing this. I better damn well be prepared if I'm going into a situation like this, to put my best foot forward, and don't need to have questions fed to me that are going to be asked. If a contractor shows up at an interview and can't answer what is your methodology to energy conservation as well as low maintenance and long life cycle durability, they probably shouldn't be building our building.
So
Because
how do you ask
you know
cost?
as well as I do that, especially the guy on the site, the job site superintendent, he needs to be able to make decisions like that at times. Because that's how critical some things are on a construction site. You go, well, I'll have to get back to you on that, because that could mean that the work on the site ends until he gets an answer, or gives an answer.
So I agree that you can do that, but you can't ask price. No, I'll tell you right now, there's not one contractor that can actually give you a price or a guaranteed maximum. If you look at what they gave you, they qualified. They gave us based on a per square foot cost.
We're
With
not,
COVID-
but we're not at that point.
Okay,
The-
so
The
what I,
the process is gonna be, so the first part of the process is they've gotta get us to these conceptual plans that we have for previous projects. Then, once we all agree on what this building's gonna look like, how big it's gonna be.
okay, so we're basing it on qualifications only then.
Well, there's a cost associated with getting us there. I mean, they're not gonna do that work for us
Correct.
for free. We have, I believe, 2 of the responses have costs in them. And that cost is gonna include, you know, their architect's fees as well as others that were outlined
So
in
with
their
the people that
proposals.
didn't provide that, how are you gonna, you see where I'm going with this?
We asked the question during the interview.
They're not gonna know the answer during the interview.
No.
We,
It would be like me coming to, you come to a meeting, Kevin, I wanna build a house, give me a cost.
No, the question is, what are your rates? Not a total cost. And if you look at the proposals, that's what they gave us. Other than there is a not to exceed price in one of them that we reviewed.
Yeah, they're not
But
apples
they,
and oranges.
but they're gonna say, well, you know, our fee for the architect is X, and our
Maybe for
project
conception.
manager is, was at a billable rate of $150 an hour. But each contractor may have a different way of costing that part of the process, which is getting us from where we are right now with, we all have different ideas of what the stations should look like, to those conceptual plans that we can present at the annual meeting.
Okay,
And
so
part of that process
we're
is
only
gonna
looking
be-
at cost up to conceptual plans,
Right.
not total building cost.
Right.
Okay.
At some point, prior to the annual meeting next year, we have to have a not to exceed price, because we need that for the bond vote. and for-
Correct, but by then we will have selected the team,
Right.
so.
Well, the goal is to select the team soon, because if we don't, we're not gonna make it to.
So it's not going to be a competitive bid process, that's what you're telling me.
Right.
That's fine. It's just not
gonna
defined,
be a
it's not
competitive
defined.
bid process. What the hell does that mean?
Well, we're gonna select a team based on quals, which is great, that's okay, and then you're gonna look at, you might consider the cost of the conceptual design, but you're not selecting your team based on their cost, overall cost for the fire station. That's what you're telling me, that's great. I'm not saying that you should. I just want to make sure we're all on the same page, because you're looking at me like, well, what do you mean?
Well, I
So let
gotta
me rephrase that to see if I understand what you're saying. So before we can get a total cost of the project, one of these companies is going to have to do all that conceptual design to come up with the building so that it can be priced out. And so previously, the way the last couple projects have gone, the district has hired somebody to come up with all that conceptual design. And then you can get put it out to several companies to get an estimate.
We're doing the same thing that was done in the past. Just, we're not just giving it to an architect and saying, design us a fire station that will fit on this property. We're going to be participating in that process and saying, yeah, we want masonry exterior walls, or no, we want a steel building. We're not allowing an architect to make all those decisions.
But how do we pick that architect?
That has to be this process.
It's part of the process is those contractors all said, we're going to use this architect. And one of the questions that we have is, why did you choose that architect?
But I'm going back to the question, all right, so we can't get a quote from 5 companies until we can give them something to quote on. And I guess my question is, how do we get that information to let those 5 companies quote? If we're going to pick one of them to do all this work and pay them, and then we're going to take their work and then send it out to the other 4 and ask them to quote it.
No, what we're working on now is selecting who that contractor is going to be. Regardless of what the end cost is, because we have no way of knowing what that's
So
going
then
to
it's
be.
qualifications based.
That contractor has an architect that is on their team. That's part of the design build process.
So we're gonna pick the company without knowing how much the project's going to cost.
Correct, but what we're choosing now is a contractor that is going to get us to that number. And there is going to be a cost associated with that, because there's a cost associated with coming up with what this building is going to look like, what those conceptual plans are going to look like. And part of that process will then be, okay, here's what your final numbers are. Same way that Tilton did the police station. The building committee worked with their contractor and went through item by item in some cases. What kind of flooring are we going to use? Well, if we pick this, it's $200 a square foot, but we can use this flooring that will last just as well, and it's only $15 a square foot. The exterior sheathing of the building. That's what we're going to be doing as a committee, is working with this architect and the contractor to make all those decisions, not just, is it a 5,000 square foot building, is it a 25,000 square foot building? But it's, how big is the chief's office going to be?
Okay, let's back up. So what you're saying then is we are picking based on a quality-based selection.
Yes.
And so when we select this team, we want that team through the whole process.
Yes.
So it's not cost-based. I understand what you're saying. We can ask for a cost to get to conceptual design, whatever. But, that's why I brought up construction management. Construction management is very transparent, where the contractor basically every month, you go through the design and everything, but when you're in the construction process, you actually see the whole building. The contractor has, this sub, that sub, they submit all the materials.
That AIA form.
And then they mark it up. Well, no, there's a whole different, construction management with a guaranteed maximum price is a great way to go, but you have to design most of it first, and that you can't do it with this process. But I would think that we want to see the contractor's numbers as we're going through it, but I'm okay with the quotes.
I feel like
You
all of
can't
a
bid.
sudden that we got 5 people there, we're all going to Disney World, we all have the same schedule at Disney World, but we're all taking different modes of transportation and different flight times, we're all gonna get there at a different time. So, I don't know how you go to a district meeting and expect someone to support a bond when what you're doing is not cost-based.
Well, in the end, after you have the conceptuals, everybody agrees on this is what the fire station's gonna be with that conceptual, then they decide, they figure out how much is this gonna cost to build with all the site work and everything else.
But it's the
That's the
one
number you
contract.
go to, that's the number you go to district meeting.
Right, but then someone's gonna ask, what did you do to get me the best price? And we're gonna have to be on site, nothing, we just went with this guy and that's his cost.
And that's why I'm bringing all this up. There's many methods
Like,
of construction.
so, what I thought, and I had in my head, was that we were going to have a, whatever you want, you peg, borrow, steal, buy, whatever, a design. That design goes to bid.
That's not design build then. That's design bid build. Different contract.
So I added a word in there, didn't I?
Yeah, but these are legal processes. This is
Oh,
not, we're
I'm
not
not
making
questioning
it
the
all up.
legality of anything, I'm questioning how I, me personally, am gonna go sit in front of 200 people and say, I support this bond, and someone says to me, what'd you do to get me the best price, Kevin? Because that's what you always do.
Well, so at that point, you would have to say, this is the process that we're using, this is the process we're using. We went over every aspect of the building, from the exterior wall materials, to the flooring materials, to the ceiling materials, trying to get the best value for what we're presenting to you so that we have a sustainable product going forward.
Exactly.
Right, the general contractor does put out bids to their subs usually, but they work with certain subs, they get the pricing,
Oh, yeah,
they work. But what we're doing now selects the contractor, basically, before you have a number. And that's why I want to make sure everybody understands that that's what we're doing.
So the thought process that I think we've been talking about is that this is gonna be a lower cost way of doing it.
It is.
But I
Is
go
it
back to
not?
Kevin's question, and it's like, how can you demonstrate that to the taxpayer who asked the question?
What the chief said.
Is that good enough?
We as a committee looked at every single item that went into this building, based our decision as to whether we were gonna use that product or not on price and serviceability and longevity.
I'm not qualified for that. I'm not qualified to pick fire equipment.
I'm not saying fire equipment, but I'll use the example that I use. Are we gonna build a masonry building? Or are we gonna build a steel building? Or are we gonna have
Okay.
a stick frame?
Those sorts of things, yes.
Right.
And that's how we can lead the architect in the direction that we want to lead.
Exactly. Part of the nice part of the design build process is that you work as a team with your contractor, your architect, and this building committee. The other way of doing it is, the architect comes up with a drawing and says, here you go, this is what your fire station is gonna look like.
No, you can work with just the same means that you're working with the GC. You're working with the architect saying, we want masonry walls, or we want wood and steel framing.
So,
Right,
It's
but
the
you
same
don't-
process.
But at some point, we have to make those determinations.
Right.
And I bet if we go around the table and say, what do you think the building should be made of? You're gonna get at least 3 different answers out of these 5 people.
Correct.
Yeah, but part of that decision-making process is a discussion with people like the architect and the contractor, we can say, if you use masonry, here are all the advantages of building a masonry building. Here's the cost. The next one, maybe if you build a steel building, here are the advantages of a steel building compared to a masonry building. Here are the disadvantages, and here's the cost. And we get to make that decision. Are we willing to spend 20% more for steel versus wood, but we're not willing to spend 50% more for masonry versus steel?
You still get to do that if you do it the different processes.
So when we used construction management for the last two processes, and the committee and commissioners were involved in selecting how the building was going to be constructed, the materials, finishes and stuff like that.
And the architect is acting as an information source to sort of answer those questions.
Yeah.
Typically, we see this done for these
As is someone from the contractor, so you get a project manager. Part of the project manager's, or a big part of the project manager's job is buying out the building.
Does an architect in a project like this provide design and cost?
The architect usually doesn't provide the cost.
Sure they can.
They
can.
usually sub that part out. They have a general idea of what things cost, overall, but to get a truer, more accurate cost of the building, they take the conceptuals and give them to somebody, and they go through the whole thing and come up with it.
What's missing is an owner's rep. If we go the route that we're talking about, we still need to hire an owner's representative.
Is that
And the
their
reason.
official title? or-
Yeah, absolutely. And
Well,
you're
I thought
gonna
for-
need that
for-
owner's rep
Yeah, I'm familiar
to
with that term.
guide the process, and you're going to need them during construction especially.
So that's,
It's a
we
whole,
almost had one, but
So that's what
Alan Clark.
Alan Clark
Yes.
would have.
I've done it on state projects, and basically you're there looking at construction, saying, yep, this is completed. They submit an invoice, oh, you're missing this slip, you're missing that. It's a process, and if we don't have it, the project's gonna fall apart.
Is that,
Because who's gonna approve the payment?
it's common in the industry.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Is that one person or a group?
Usually one person's
Is it one person?
an experienced person, but it's another cost you probably
I was
haven't
gonna
thought
say,
about.
And
Where's the cost? Is that
It's,
a percentage of the contract, or is it?
no, they'll give you, it's usually time, for something like this, it might end up being time and materials, which can add up.
Is that what,
But-
Mr. Glad, we talked to him about,
He had
a max,
a maximum not to exceed price.
yeah.
Probably based on so
Basically
many
a
hours.
percentage, right, I thought?
Yes, it was based on so many hours.
Yes, yeah, that's how I usually.
He said no
structure
matter what, they would never go over this, even if it exceeded the hours.
But I'm not bringing it up to throw monkey wrenches in, I just want you to be aware that that's something we're gonna need. And the other thing, like if you do a different process, sometimes the architect actually has their staff be your owner's rep. But here you can't because the architect's working for the general contractor, so it's, and we're also gonna need special inspections on a project like this, which you generally would hire a special inspector. Whereas when you do the design build, the design firm can provide those special inspection services. They don't need to, there are testing agencies.
What is a special inspector?
It's an IBC criteria, it's basically, it's part of the code, and they'll test concrete, steel, welds, compaction testing, all of those things that need to be tested during construction.
isn't that the responsibility of the building inspector in town?
No. No way. He doesn't have a nuclear densometer reader that he even knows how to use.
I'm just asking.
No,
I don't, 'cause
no.
I don't know.
Special
I'm familiar with
inspections
all
is a
those tests.
whole.
You know, a company like Miller Engineering
Miller's
does
one.
that.
Miller
They do,
does it.
they'll do 7-day breaks on
Yeah.
concrete. They go out and do compaction tests.
Yeah, yeah. There's SW Cole, there's a whole bunch of, but I'm only bringing it up because there's other costs
So if,
that I want to make you aware
are
of.
these other costs
Significant?
included in other methods?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah. Those tests have to be done regardless of
Correct.
how you get there.
Right, but if,
Like, let's say we were doing a steel building, you can't start erecting steel until you have your 7-day breaks. Concrete.
but what my question is this,
It's more.
we've chosen this design build.
Yeah, you're still going to
So
have all
if-
the same
if-
components.
If we went another route, are some of those inspections included? And because they're included, does it cost less money?
It may or may not, you still have to pay somebody to do those services. But the owner, where I was going with the owner's rep during design, the architect is your owner's rep. You know, they're gonna meet with you and say, I need this, this, and that. You can still do it with a design build. Now you've got two entities involved in the, but the general contractor will work with the architect to do the construction cost estimate. I'm not trying to lean any which way. I
No,
think
no,
you're
but
gonna pay the same.
You gotta,
If you do the design bid build, you get a competitive construction bid. Takes longer. The process is longer.
but that doesn't sound like that's what we initially set out to do.
It's not.
Right, so you're doing design build, which is fine. I'm just trying to define, I want to make sure we all know what design build is and we all think it's the same thing. That's why I'm saying, I'd like to see a design build contract to make sure that we're not forgetting. I don't have I have a CM, construction management contract that I used all the time, so I'm very familiar with it. I'm not familiar with the AIA's design build. That doesn't mean we can't go that route. I just want to make sure we're all following the same process.
You have to.
Right. And right now, we're
Get the
not
Disney World together.
even in selection. I think we're all confused as to, but we're getting closer. As long as we all agree, we're selecting one of these 5 contractors based on their qualifications and experience.
So
And if you're not comfortable with that,
do we
then you
just
shouldn't be
kind
doing
of have to
design
accept
bid.
that we may not have the best value there is going this route?
Oh, I don't know. I'm not saying we don't. I'm just saying we all ought to agree on how we're selecting the contractor. They're like, I reviewed them. I don't want to share my thoughts on each individual one at this point. I want to get the criteria that we're reviewing it for, and I don't think the criteria is just an interview.
What do you think it is?
That list right there. That we each look at each package, and each of us, generally what you do is, in our selection committee, first we have to develop but these are just, I stole this from another project, just deleted names, and I threw numbers in to just show you how, when you pick what the criteria is and how you weight it, the computer tells you the ratios, and in the end you get a score, okay? I think that obviously we ought to rate them based on the quality of response. The biggest item is the project team, and that 15 might go to 40, I don't know. The understanding of the project, we want to know what their estimating process is, their similar experience. So all of these are things, yes, you can ask them in the interview, but it'd be nicer if it were in their package.
Why?
Because I think you do this before the interview so you can develop the right questions to ask each individual contractor.
So you sort of force them to give you all that information in writing. And then
So
in your
that they
interview
know that
process-
that's what they're being scored on. And so it's unfair for somebody to have to go to an interview and find out, oh, I'm getting scored on this scheduling technique. I wasn't sure, I wasn't aware I was supposed to provide that. And they're gonna hand it to us in the interview, and we're gonna sit there and look at it? I'd rather have it ahead of time. That doesn't, I have a whole list of questions to ask in interviews, which
So-
are the same like yours.
Could,
Those, you're still gonna ask questions in the interview.
And part of the interview process is, you judge the folks that are there, they're hopefully it's the team that you're gonna be using, and can you work with them? Do they just grate on your nerves?
Right?
Right.
They may be the most qualified and the lowest cost, but you can't work.
Well, not lowest cost, because we're not looking at cost. I know you're having a hard time
kind
with
of
that.
unique here because I do not have to get along with you to work with you.
Some people do.
I don't. And I don't have to like you to have me work for you. And I
Well,
can actually
this is gonna
dislike
be
you
a
and have
team
you
that
work for me
gets
as long as
along.
you're doing the job.
Yeah.
I don't get caught up in that emotional
No.
that I guess a lot of people do.
I do, part of my role on many projects was bringing the team together. Not having the owner be mad at the contractor, who's mad at the engineer or architect. It's a team, and you want it to be a team.
Yeah, it has to.
And when things go awry, part of it is me bringing in meetings and saying, come on, let's iron this out and move on. Because it's not like this is a big project, us. It's small relatively.
Yeah.
to some
I think
projects.
it's
For
only big to
Northfield,
us.
For
I think to
Northfield,
these
it's a big
people, it's
project.
like flipping nickels.
Correct.
Oh, yeah, for the
Yes.
contractors that responded to us.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
this-
This
This is
is-
small potato.
This
Yeah.
is like a snack, it's not even,
Right.
yeah. So,
But we don't want to be, we as a committee aren't going to be the ones ruffling their feathers and saying, well, you know, can you get this cheaper than here or there? That's not our role.
so I see an advantage to having someone properly prepared for an interview. But I also think it's okay to ask a question that they haven't been prepared to answer.
Oh, absolutely, I have a whole bunch of them. But I think if we're going to be looking at certain criteria, they ought to know that's what we're
They should,
doing.
yeah, and I think that, so can we, the only way they're gonna know that is if we tell them ahead of time.
What I figured we can do is create this criteria and say, this is what we're going to be selecting you based on. Send it to all of the contractors or teams and say, you know, please, if you have any additional information to submit, please submit it by this date at this time at,
That would become part of their packet,
yeah.
and you would do that because if they prepared the packet with no real
Well, say-
knowledge of what we
say-
wanna do.
Right, they prepared it saying, here's a calls package. But we might want to say, well, what's their scheduling technique? What is their
What does that
cost
mean?
estimating? A lot of them use scheduling programs
Software.
and
Oh,
it's a
okay.
software and, I'm not gonna, I think they all will, they all do it, whether some told us about it or not. They're similar experience, okay, that's in there in every one of them. Estimating, some of them use certain programs. We want to compare everybody equally. So if somebody gave us more information, or somebody didn't give information that they didn't think we were looking for, we ought to give them the opportunity to provide it. I'm trying, because we didn't send this out, we just said, send us your qualifications. We didn't give them any idea of how we were going to select. And we could be questioned as to how we did select someone if we don't come up with a criteria. This is a legal process we're doing. And if we don't have, we say, oh, well, we like this guy better, right?
There's
You need
nothing-
something in
But there's
writing.
nothing wrong with that. That's not illegal.
It's not just.
That's really hard to justify.
But it's not illegal. And I'm not saying that that's what we're gonna do. But the contractors who responded to us are all very professional organizations. Two of them chose to provide us with a great deal of information. The other three did not. That right there tells me something. Not because I don't agree that we need to tell them, give us these. I want to see in your qualifications these 10 items, because based upon who those contractors are, they all should have known that. And I think it's fine if we want to send out, we develop a selection list criteria, we can send it to them and say, these are the criteria that we're going to base our selection on. They'll be more prepared for the interview, perhaps.
I'm just trying to follow a standard process, and to date, we have not.
But who's standing?
Municipal, I sent a link, Beth never sent that to everybody, right? There's processes, I mean, I'm not a lawyer, but you have to have a process. You can't just pick someone. I disagree with you. You need to have a selection project. You are using public money. It has to be administered properly. And if you go to any fire station that's ever been built, I'll bet they all did something like this. They either did a quals, like UNH has a great quals-based selection criteria. They have a whole guide on it and everything. Everybody follows a process.
And two of those contractors did.
Would the others have responded different? We can't answer that question. But would the other contractors, would they have responded differently if
Maybe.
they had?
I can tell you when I reviewed those packages, I saw a clear winner. It's probably not the same people you thought.
Well, or did they respond thinking that they were gonna get something like this? Here's our.
This isn't their first time doing this.
No, it's a false package, and some of those the firms have huge marketing departments, some not as much, some have a lot of flair, some not as much. They all have some experience, but some have more than others.
All right, my 50,000-foot comment is, this is a difficult process for the town, for the district. We've done this multiple times and it keeps getting voted down. I would hate to do anything during the process that provides any more ammunition for a reason to get voted down. So the design build, which I'm not a construction person, so I'm relying on expertise of others here at the table. If we can go down that path and demonstrate to the voters that we did this for these reasons and it's to save money and to give us a best product or the value, and we can do that where it makes sense, okay. But I'm sitting here going, I'm not understanding how we're going to be able to sell that to the taxpayers. Kevin's comment, when we didn't say, yeah, we got 5 bids, and we selected this one based on this criteria, even though they weren't the lowest bid, or whatever the conversation is.
We select those people because they provided the least amount of paperwork that said the most on this one. Look how thick the packet was, so
Right,
that's why we picked them.
I think you need something in writing on
So I'm just-
how you evaluated every one of these packages.
I just don't want to give the taxpayers any reason to get up there and question the committee's process so that, you can plant doubt. Because we're already going to have, trouble with the total dollar amount. We're already going to have trouble with moving the station, or, you know, we know we're gonna have a lot of these issues, so, you know, we need to avoid as many as possible. So I'm concerned based on this conversation.
I think we need to make a list of criteria and that we need to score each one of these packages for exactly what you're saying. And this is why we selected this team. They meant this, and if you have something like this, it's as clear as can be.
Do you think that the questions that we have so far can be parlayed into a form like this?
I think we
I think
can,
they're
I
two
think we can
different
do
things.
this
I
without
think
even
they're two
asking for more information, if that's what you're saying.
I think the questions and the evaluation sheet are two different.
Can
Yeah,
they
the
be
questions
merged
can
into
be
one?
asked in the interview. We agreed we're gonna interview them, and I have the interview as one of the criteria, based on what they,
But you're gonna get,
right.
out of the interview, you're gonna get who's the project team? That's gonna be one of the questions that's asked in the interview.
Right, but we're gonna evaluate that project team based on who they have, like, how many fire stations has a general contractor built? How many fire stations has the architect designed?
I
Are
can
they
tell you,
similar to ours?
One of
Those
the
are all
contractors
criteria.
called me today and said, where are we at in the process? And then told me, by the way, we won the bid for this project, this fire station project that's coming up, and this one that's coming up. So they've got 2 more fire stations under their belt that weren't in their packet
They shouldn't
because
be calling.
they got them awarded after they did this.
Yeah, we should be following a public process.
We are.
When they call you personally, that's
That's
not a
not-
public process.
The question was, where are we at? So
Right,
who do they call? Because nothing has been communicated to these people.
correct.
Because the committee sits here on our thumbs.
Well, we didn't provide a process, so they're wondering what the process is. I'm wondering what the process is, and I'm trying to be part of it. And right now, we don't have a process. We can all say, okay, I vote for this one, I vote for this one, and somebody's gonna say, well, why? Right? I mean, how are we doing it? Are we each get one vote? How are we selected? Tell me how we're selected.
That's what we've been talking about, that we're gonna have this
So,
set of criteria.
Oh, okay, that's what we need to put it.
And-
Whether we give it to the contractors now, if we have enough information in here that we can do our review with criteria, we don't need to send it to the contractors to ask for more information. Is that what you're suggesting?
Yes.
so the first people you have to justify it to is because this committee can only make recommendations, it's the commissioners.
Right.
So if the commissioners have questions, how did you arrive at this candidate, at this recommendation? You should be able to answer it by saying, they scored the best on this.
Right, okay. So, you guys keep looking at me like I don't want to do this. I'm gonna make it perfectly clear. We need to have some kind of criteria. Okay, I agree. So we can end that part of the conversation.
Okay.
I don't believe that we need to send this to anybody prior to interviews.
That's fine.
That the questions that we develop for the interview process will help us fill in this form.
Well, I think that reviewing the package before any interview is the first step.
And I somewhat disagree with you because I think we need to come up with more than just these questions. I think there's other stuff in here that we need to agree on. And based on the outcome of that, maybe we do send them back saying, we're gonna review your package based on whatever we come up with. And if you feel that you need to provide more information for us, then we give them the opportunity to do that. So we all have it in writing. We're gonna sit here and take mounds of notes while we're interviewing them and hope we remember all the little details that they would give us in writing. I want it all in writing beforehand, and then when they come in, I want to be able to evaluate how they're answering the questions, you know. You know, when a lawyer asks somebody a question, they already know the answer. They want to see how the person answers it. I want to know all the answers before they come in for their interview, and then I want to see how they answer them.
Yeah, we should be reviewing the contractors based on this submission only, unless we let them supplement it. And then we rate them on the interview answering additional questions, because you need to justify how you even got to give somebody an interview.
But we also need to give them a timeline.
Yes.
We need to tell them what our expectations are. We're gonna have this step done by this day. We're working towards having a number to provide at the March meeting, you know. That all looks like to me is outlined in this kind of
Yeah,
document.
it's a project description.
I think we've already done this.
We have?
Otherwise, how did we get these?
Well, I don't have anything that was sent to any contractor.
We didn't send anything to any contract. We just called them and said we were interested in building a fire station, and are they interested? More or less.
That's exactly the conversation. That's what we got.
Right, but that's,
So
is that what you're gonna tell the taxpayers?
This is only an example. I'm sure that
It's
a
very
different
standard.
company, huh?
It's very standard.
Is it?
Do you know how many proposals I've done for bridges and everything? They follow the same format.
So, no, and I get what
But
Kevin's
you don't
saying.
need to tell them a submission
These
format.
companies are all used to doing this, but
Yeah, this is only
the
new
taxpayer
to
at
us. It's like a heart surgeon. Oh, you're gonna cut me open? Yeah, I do it 7 times a
but the
day.
taxpayer at the meeting asking the questions, did you follow the standard process? Well, not really, but these contractors all know what they're doing. To me, as a taxpayer, it's not a good answer.
I don't think we need to start over. I mean, this tells them submission format. Okay, I hated that when towns did that, because I've already got stuff already written, and now I've got to put it in your format. We're looking for content. I think that we can probably just come up with our selection criteria, provide it to the 5, and say, this is our criteria. If you would like to supplement your package, submit it by such and such a date. And then what we need to do is review these packages and score each one of them on whatever our criteria is. And then you've got a spreadsheet, and you're going to come up with a winner, I can guarantee. And then you have a justification to your taxpayer. Yes, we looked at, their experience in this. Yes, we looked at this and that, and you have something. Right now, we don't have any. We're developing it, but I want to make sure we're all on the same page that we need to develop it, because we do. We need a design criteria, or not a design criteria, a selection criteria. And it's simple, it's simple.
We've all agreed on it. We've all agreed on it,
Right,
so
so
let's
we
move
can
on.
let's start with developing that criteria, I guess. I don't think we need to tell them their submission requirements or anything like these. Normally, if we just started out, we might have had something similar. We should develop the criteria.
So if I look at any number of requests for qualifications, the majority of them are going to be what I'm looking at right now.
Search request for qualifications on the internet and see what we get.
If you look at this one, compare it to the one that was used for the Tilton Police Station, they're the same.
They're essentially the same.
Yeah, because they're not going to reinvent the wheel every time a municipality wants qualifications from a contractor to build a building, regardless of what the building. Build a new town hall, build a fire station, build a police station, build a DPW,
Right.
whatever it is.
Right, but so, technically, we probably should have followed the same
So
format.
if we
But
go
we
through
can-
this,
we can-
right,
We don't need to do all, this is a great example,
so
but we're not
For
gonna,
example,
we're not
I-
gonna re-ask for
I
qualifications.
open this up, at first, after the introduction, project description, background. Am I gonna find that in here?
I don't know.
No, that's what we provide them.
We provide that to
Right.
them.
And project schedule, am I gonna find that in here? Because if we're not gonna find what's here in here,
This is, that, what you're reading is what we were supposed to provide to the contractors, did we?
I don't think so, but I don't know.
Well, I'm sure you
And I
gave them
hate,
some
I
information.
hate saying I don't know, because I like to think I know what the hell I'm doing from time to time.
So the information that was given to them was that this committee has been tasked by the commissioners to come up with, using the design build process, to come up with a plan to build a fire station on the existing property at Park Street that we can present to the voters in March of 2023.
Okay, so that's what we would have written.
So the result of that conversation was this,
Pile 5.
right?
Right.
Okay, so even, I hate to say even though we did not put
We
it
did it
in
verbally,
writing,
is what you're saying.
they all got the same message.
Yes.
Is
I
that,
hope so.
is that,
That's why you usually do it in writing,
well, that's
because
what I'm saying. Is that,
a
is that
contractor will
adequate?
ask
Can
you
we,
questions that,
can we bank on that being adequate?
Against what?
here's the problem with
Against
calling.
someone in 2023 saying, you know what? No.
Somebody in 2023 says, how did you choose this contract? I say, well, we asked for responses from 8 contractors, and we got one from Fulcrum, we got one from Hutter, we got one from Bonifaced and Stone, we got one from Milestone, we got one from the other. Wow. These are all highly experienced, well-qualified firms. And then somebody may say, well, how come you didn't choose Joey's Fire Station Construction Company? Because Joey's not, wasn't around then, whatever the answer.
Because we didn't call them.
No one
See,
can
that's what-
We
question,
didn't, normally you advertise, but
no one can question the quality of the firms that are responding to.
No, and we had some tell us, no, I'm not interested. They were right up front and said,
Yeah.
no, thank you, I can't do that, whatever the reason was, I don't remember the reason.
But did
The
somebody,
fact is, they said
did
no.
somebody challenge us on the fact that we didn't advertise this?
I don't know, I don't know.
There's no requirement for it to be checked. There's no requirement, we could have just said, we're gonna choose contractor A.
There's an RSA somewhere, but I'm not aware, that says something about public funds, municipal public funds, and the manners in which you can use.
There's no requirement for a bid process unless the organization's bylaws state so. And the fire district's bylaws do not state that we're required to go through a bid process.
The one I've seen is a public works project having a dollar value greater than a certain amount. But I don't, maybe it's not still in effect. I remember it from years ago. But I'm not a lawyer, so I'm not even gonna pretend to be.
Well, we have a lawyer who's an expert in municipal law. Yeah, we can probably pose the question.
I mean, you
I don't
don't
want
have
to
to
get down the
do it.
road in this process and someone stick their foot out and
You
say,
didn't advertise it,
you didn't
it's
do it.
illegal from there on or something. I don't know if that is a.
Well, I don't know either. That's why I'm trying to,
All right,
But I
well,
do
establish-
know that I have seen many times these requests for qualifications commonly referred to as RFQs in the paper for whatever project it might be. We've done them in the town level for engineering, and
right.
so
So this
I-
process is varying from the norm that I'm used to. That's all I'm saying.
right.
I'm gonna
That doesn't
make a
mean I'm-
suggestion then. There's far too many concerns around this table right now for how we've gotten to where we're at. My suggestion is that we stop the process. We haven't really made any progress anyways. You can ask the chief to consult with the fire district's attorney, see if there are any requirements for a written RFQ to be advertised or sent out, or
That's a good idea.
once we have that answer, then we'll know whether we can proceed from where we're at today and how we got here, or whether we have to go back and do it over again. That will put to rest everybody's concerns about how we got here.
So, Tilton Northfield Fire District, Fire and EMS is or is not defined as a municipality.
It is.
It is.
It's a special village district,
Yeah.
which is a municipality within the state of New Hampshire.
Okay. So the same laws will apply as if this was Canterbury and they were building a station.
Mostly, yes, yes.
There-
So,
I'm only familiar with reading some, like, the official positions, like the RSA's that are around the positions, and it will say that there's well, it talks about like who heads the district, and it's not specifically said commissioners, but it talks about that their responsibilities are the same as a selectman.
That's correct.
yeah,
And it will say that there's a treasurer that has the same duties as the treasurer in a town.
so the, I don't know,
Unless, but then there's an unless in those that lays out if the bylaws
Mhm.
are written different.
There's some,
I don't know about I've never read any of the RSA's that apply to a village district in a municipality when it comes to purchasing. So ask the question.
We can ask the question. I'm not sure you had to advertise it. I mean, you have 5. I know on some other projects I've had, we've actually called 5 different contractors that we qualify to be.
I'm not sure you have to advertise either in New Hampshire. In Massachusetts, you do have to advertise. It has to actually go in a register, state register, that you're doing a project because it's over a certain amount of money. New Hampshire, I don't believe, has that requirement. But I know for sure if you have to advertise it or not. I don't think so.
I suspect if it is, it's over a certain dollar amount or it's relative to bonding.
Yeah, that might be the key for the one.
So,
But I don't know.
some of these things that people think of as municipal entities, like the water district,
Well,
they're not.
They're not.
They don't have that.
They're a private company.
they're a private company owned by a special village district.
So their rules, they are convoluted as the day is long.
So if you can ask the question
We'll ask the
anyway.
question.
In the meantime, no matter what, we need to come up with how we're going to evaluate.
Agreed.
So that should be our next step.
And I also think, I mean, I don't mean to get hung up on this process thing, but is there a way to integrate some kind of competitive bidding? Or is that just blown out because of the process?
With the design build process, the competitive bid mostly happens when the contractor subbids the electrical and the plumbing, the HVAC, and concrete. But generally, in my experience, the contractor is familiar with working with certain sub-bidders, and that's.
Contractors have certain people they like to work with.
Yeah, and that's, the price that they get is the price that you're gonna get. And now,
And then, I mean, I can see certain advantages to that, because I
it's a
think
faster
scheduling can be a
process,
lot
it's
smoother.
probably gonna be a faster process using design build, because you're not having to, with the design bid build, we have the design, then you have to bid everything out, subcontractors, and sometimes you don't bid some subcontractor stuff out until later in the process because of things that have changed with change orders in the beginning of the project. Because I did 2 fire stations in Tewksbury. One was a design bid build, which I did not prefer because it took almost twice as long as it should have taken because of issues that came up that weren't foreseen. And then we did a construction management process, which I preferred, was easier to work with, but that isn't the process that we're using here. We decided that we're using a design and build process, which is similar to the construction management, but that is not.
Construction management, you can actually bid, because you've got your
Yes,
architect
right.
separate, and they actually bid based on, like you said, conceptual or whatever, and you get a guaranteed maximum price. And there's a contingency in there, and the contractor, so it is competitive. And then through the process, you know, you're approving real. It's not just, well, I bid $10,000 for this. It's like, okay, show me your receipts, and it's a true, open, transparent thing, and they mark up their concrete sub by, you know, whatever their overhead and the profit, you know, there's a margin there. But it's very, very open book.
One of the
You haven't even
advantages,
squeaked.
I'm just lost at this point.
one of the advantages to the design build process that you mentioned is that contractors have subs that make it work. So the expectation is that because they work together on a regular basis, you're going to get the best price and the most productivity out of that group of people than you would on a competitive bid process, because you may have on a competitive bid process, you've hired a general contractor. Now they're going to go out and take a little bid. Well, that little bidder may have never built a fire station. And they may have never worked in New Hampshire before. They may not have no clue what winter conditions are.
So you can also have requirements for subbidders as well.
You can, but my point is that in that competitive bid process, you might get a lower number. It ends up costing you a whole lot more.
It's a complicated process.
I mean, I'm okay with the design build process. I agree with you. I think that when the contractor works with the architect and engineers on a regular basis, you're going to get a better product, better less cost. But you don't know that cost. So we need to select somebody based on qualification. And we have to be able to explain that we used the QBS process. And that's okay, and it just, as long as you document it, it's okay.
So,
So I'm not saying start over.
no, and I didn't get that from anything you said, that we should start over. I just want to be on firm ground from all perspectives. So that we can look at the people with a straight face and say, this is what we have, this is why we have it, this is how we go. Because that will get you more support than just say, here it is, and we need this much money, and take a leave.
And part of that process in building that support is, as we've talked about, is we have public meetings through the process, and not just at the end of the process and say, here's the plan, here's the number.
You know how we always have trouble getting people to meetings? You know what I found works? Tell them you're gonna talk about trash, they'll load this room.
Well, we could use that we're deciding on what color dumpster to have at the new fire station.
And whether the town will pick it up or we have to have it all.
Right.
Now, you do know that the more meetings you make the architect and contract.
More it's
the
More it costs. Because time is money, everybody,
Absolutely.
nothing's free. And I'm fine paying as long as there's value.
Right,
Right.
so when
But
if
to have
we're
the
gonna call a
architect-
meeting, we better
Have the
have
architect
it ready
there,
outlined.
just in case some member of the public asks a question. There's no value.
Right, but even meeting with us,
Oh, yes.
I mean, if the contractors were sitting here, they'd be going, oh my God, I don't wanna work with them.
Oh, yeah.
So we need to be very organized to say, okay, we wanna meet, and these are the things we want to meet on.
Right.
Type, structure or square footage or whatever. But we need to be very, very clear as to why we want them to meet.
Because it is most likely an hourly rate.
It is.
And, when we were going through the previous process, and the architect would show up, and like, and somebody from the contractor would show up. Why are they here? 'Cause we're paying them.
Well, I kind of disagree with one of the things you said, that like if you have them here to answer questions that nobody asks, then you don't see that there was a value to it. But the problem is, if somebody from the public asks a question, that they need to be there to answer it. They said, well, I asked this question and nobody could answer it, so there is, even though they might not do any work, there still could possibly be value there.
Could be. Because you don't want to say, well, I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know, and that's the way we've always done it. It turns me off quicker than you can imagine, because you're done. You don't know, and we've always done it that way. I'm not your guy. I don't, you have to know.
And that's why you have those subject matter experts.
Well, and then part of it is, once you've selected the team, they can develop a meeting schedule with us, and they say, this is what we want to accomplish, because they want to move the project forward too.
Right.
We're not the best ones to say, this is what they need. They're the best ones to come and say, this is what we need you guys to look at.
It's the
Decide
timeline
on,
that we
this
need
is
to
the
go by
timeline.
to have a number
So we're
by.
gonna meet on,
We're doing
twice this
bond,
month. or-
we need a number probably at the end of December. So
We need-
we can
yeah.
have bond hearings and stuff like
Oh,
that.
absolutely. Was it three?
I don't-
Three public hearings for a bond?
That was two.
Two?
I thought it was
Okay, I think it's at least two.
So
And
we
they don't
better
have to
get
be-
it
And it's
here.
time sensitive.
They have to be in a time frame within a certain
So many days
of the meeting.
before, but not too many days before, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, it's not like they make it very easy.
We're almost to.
So that at some point, we need a calendar.
Yep.
So, kind of like the calendar DRA puts out for our annual meetings.
Yep. Well,
And don't miss any of those, because if you do, you'll wait till
Done.
next year.
unless you can get a judge to say,
Yeah,
want to do a special, and they knock off.
that would be extremely rare, I think. So we need that question answered, because the sooner we know that, if we can do that, if we have to do it.
Regardless,
an
we
app-
still need to do this anyways.
Exactly, even if the advertisement is more or less after the fact, it needs to be, if it's required, we
put it
need to
right
show
in.
it in the process. You don't want to get stumbled up then.
I'm going to make a suggestion.
Okay.
We have a subject matter expert in developing one of these. My suggestion is that we allow Lisa to do that for us if she's willing. Email it to all of us. We can review it and get back to her with any questions, comments, concerns, additions, deletions, and then she can put it all together and give it to us at our next meeting.
is that allowed in this process?
Yes.
I wasn't sure if communications between members, but
Well,
we're not selecting, so
Right.
it doesn't matter.
Yeah, but they're,
Would not make, so we can have communications between ourselves, we can't make decisions unless we're all together.
that's where I was trying to get.
Right, so we can ask Lisa to develop this form, send it to all of us. We can make suggestions, comments, additions, deletions, and then bring it back to us at our next meeting, and then that's when we decide, yes, that's what we want.
So all I'll be looking for is what do those, the 1, 2, 3, 4. I suggest the project team, we split into two things where we rate the general contractor and the architect, basically on both experience, but we combine.
So do certain contractors only work with certain architects?
No, it depends on the project.
I think it's
Do
similar to-
certain contractors have an architect on staff?
Some,
Is that an advantage? Or is it a disadvantage?
In a fire
depends upon,
station? I don't know.
depends upon the experience of the architect and what you're trying to build.
Right. I mean, I think we want an architect that's very experienced in fire stations.
In recent, that they've
That
done.
are similar to what we're looking at.
Which makes sense.
We don't,
So when you go to that thing, there's gonna be a million architects there, that's all they do is fire stations, and you can talk to them and stuff like that.
Get one drunk and bring him back.
That's awkward. John can do that. It's John.
so I guess what I would just ask is, we don't want a million categories.
No more than
Just
10.
suggestions,
No
yeah,
more than
right,
10.
right. And
But-
obviously, there won't be this total guaranteed maximum price that's at the bottom. So,
So you couldn't put somewhat of a price in there, and so they knew, so we could be,
what are they pricing?
because what we know what we want as a station, or somewhat.
The only cost factor that they're providing, some have provided and some didn't, is this part of our process, which is getting us from where we are today to
District meeting.
a set of conceptual drawings that is developed by this committee and whoever we choose as the contractor and architect team, so that we can present that number at the district meeting.
Then we need to be clear in writing what they're actually providing us a price for. An X square foot station on the Park Street site with this fire equipment or something. Or to design it, basically they're gonna design a facility at a certain square foot cost. Or
We don't
a
know what-
certain- Well, we don't know the square foot cost.
We don't know what
Let
the
me
square
back up.
footage is going to be.
Well, and how can somebody, okay, so we're gonna just, we can ask them for the design of a fire station that will fit on the Park Street site.
I would ask that.
The problem is you're not gonna get the same relative, it's not a biddable number.
You might, if you want to put a number to it, we say, what is the cost associated with coming up with a conceptual plan? The plan may be 4,000 feet, it might be 14,000 feet, it might be 40,000 feet, but the plan, the cost to develop a 20,000 square foot building isn't that much different, depending upon the size. So it'd be based more or less on an hourly rate, and they'll break it down. The architect is gonna have to work so many hours to come up with this, and the site guy's gonna, like, the layout of it and kind of stuff.
But do they need to know that it's a
Fire station.
full-time fire station is not a, so we need living space and admin space. It's not like we're building a substation.
Right, there's information that, if they're gonna bid, they need to bid on, we don't want apples and oranges. We need to define what they're bidding on. So,
But
I
again,
don't think we should ask cost, to be honest with you. I think it
and I
just
wasn't
muddies the
suggesting
water.
that we are asking costs, but I'm answering Matt's question, which is, we can't come up with a final cost for the building until we know what we're gonna build. Until we go through this process of making those decisions, do we want a masonry building? No, we want stick frame, because.
Right, I understand all
50%.
that, but I thought we had like some type of plan of like 4 bedrooms, 12 offices, a meeting room. I mean, so they know what they're putting in there, right?
We can discuss, that's part of the discussion with the design team.
Right, that's, we're gonna come up with that as we go through this process in saying, how many offices are we gonna have? Well, we need one for the chief, we need one for the deputy chief, we need one for, plans, we need,
But you've already hired it by them, they can't bid on it.
I'm not saying that
You're-
they're gonna bid on it. Matt says that we need to come up with a final number. Well, we can't,
Oh, we
because
will
we're gonna
eventually.
develop this building through this process. And we may all think, okay, we need 6 offices, but we may decide as we go through the process, that we only need 4.
But you were suggesting that we were gonna have a cost for the conceptual design as part of our review.
No.
As part of this, no.
No. What are they gonna charge us to do this?
Well, that's the same thing.
No, it's not. Maybe I'm not being clear. They're all gonna charge us something to go through this design process.
Yes, and we're gonna ask them what that cost is.
That's the cost I'm talking about.
Is that the first step?
But we haven't, that's still not okay, we need to tell them what their conceptual design is. What are they going to do? We're just gonna say, okay, give us a cost, you're gonna get one cost from one person, one from another, with totally different idea what their concept plan's gonna look like.
No, I guess I'm not explaining.
Well, I've
They're
been
gonna have
in the
a- they're gonna
design
have a
field a
cost.
lot of years.
They're gonna have a cost for an architect on an hourly basis.
Okay, so we're just gonna ask for hourly rates.
They're gonna have a cost for their project manager on an hour. However they do it, maybe they don't do it on an hourly basis. Maybe they say, we'll give you 3 months worth of work for $10,000. I don't know.
Doesn't one of these do that?
One of
Well,
them
they
does.
all have to give us it in the same format for us to be able to compare them, correct? So we have to define that format.
At what point?
Now.
Now,
Well,
I mean,
yes,
if you're gonna ask
I,
the question, you have to have the.
right.
right. I've done a lot of proposals on a lot of things for things that I've designed before, and you can give a conceptual design cost, but you need to know the basis of what you're giving them. What your concept, you need something definitive to say, yes, we're gonna build this type of facility on this lot, and each contractor needs to have that same information.
So if we tell the contractor, we're gonna build we wanna build the 10,000 square foot building on this property.
Give us a conceptual design, a cost to do the conceptual design.
And one of them says, okay, this is how we do. We have an hourly rate for our architect, we have an hourly rate for a project manager, we have an hourly rate for a clerk.
And the other guy says, I'm gonna do a lump sum $30,000. And the other guy says, well, it's 30, but I'm not gonna do this, this, or this. And so it could be this or this. Okay, how do you compare 5 contractors doing it?
How do you not compare 5 contractors to that? Because if that's how they do it, then that's what they're gonna submit.
Wouldn't they
But how do
do
we evaluate it?
it, wouldn't they do it to our specs?
Yes, so if we give them our specs. So if we ask them for, what's your hourly rate for your architect? What's your hourly rate for your project manager? What's your hourly rate for your estimator? That's a fair comparison all across the board. But if somebody comes in and says, well, I'll do all that for $30,000, but I'm not gonna tell you how many hours it's gonna take. You
You
can't
can't
convert it. So you want everybody to submit that, the same process numbers, you know, the hourly rate. I think that's probably the best we can do at this point. Let's ask for hourly rates on
Yeah, and here I'm gonna throw a monkey wrench
Yeah, I
into
know.
that, because I've worked on projects where my rate is way higher than others, but I do it in half the time because I've done it so many times. That's why I'm saying I don't think we should even bother. All of these are capable, and none of them are really gonna basically put it to us. They want the job, right? I don't think we should ask for cost. That's my personal opinion. I think we ought to evaluate them based on their experience, and that's a true quality-based selection. It's a protocol that's been around for probably 30 years.
So going back to your question, is I think how you asked it, this is not how committees in the past have done this. They've taken that money that the taxpayers voted up front, $100,000 or whatever dollar amount it was, and they hired an architect and paid the architect to sit down and work with us and come up with those conceptual design. And then you send that out to your contractors and you have a bill.
Now, we could do that. You could use the past plan, even though it's not what you're gonna build, to say what would it cost to do a concept like this? And then that would be a fair comparison. It doesn't mean, but that may not be what it's actually gonna cost. Because you don't think what they came up with is what you're gonna build. Is that I mean, I thought we came up with a plan.
Pretty close in
So-
my mind, but
Okay,
other people may think different.
so what we could do is include that plan of the Park Street.
Park Street
That was just renovations
was a
to the
renovation.
existing buildings. That really has no relevance to what we're doing now.
We're wiping it out, is what you're saying?
Yeah.
Not the building.
Well, that remains to be seen too.
So we don't,
So
okay,
this is a one-station solution over here on Park Street, and I think the previous one was,
two-stage.
Two-station
Yeah.
solution. Well, both of the previous one were two-station solutions. This is currently heading in the one-station solution direction.
We
I
need
think
to clarify
we need to
that.
give them the same
We
information.
need to clarify that. Our charge from the commissioners is to come up with a conceptual plan to build a single station at Park Street. You know, what happens with Center Street is not part of our
Okay.
purview. It's to build a
Single,
single.
no, but I was only saying the previous plans, with the, whatever was done for
Wouldn't be
Park
relevant-
Street.
wouldn't be relevant
wouldn't
anymore.
meet all
Okay.
those requirements.
Right, because
Okay.
it was just working with that 4,800 square foot building that's at Park Street now and renovating it.
right.
Is there any decisions we can or should make before we involve these people any further? For example, some people think that the building there is best raised and start over. Some people think a building beside that one, without actually touching it, so you don't have to remodel it, use it as it is.
But
We
that's
don't-
gonna come out in the design process.
We don't see, exactly, and we don't know the answers to those questions. We don't know, would it be cheaper to just tear that building down? If we build an addition and it touches the existing structure, does that existing structure now have to be brought up to code? We don't know.
Yes, we do.
You know, it does.
How do we know that?
It's the law. It's the international building code.
It's a code.
I'd like to hear from
And
somebody
the
that,
state, the state
I'm a
has
I'm a
accepted-
licensed structural engineer.
I understand that,
Yes,
but
it needs to be upgraded.
Whenever I think about something is a law or there's a requirement or whatever, I flash back to when I think it was Compaq, the computer company,
Yep.
bought an estate in Meredith, on Meredith Neck, and they wanted this dock that was beyond any allowable parameters. And there was a legal situation, and this company wanted that dock. And they were told, no, you can't have the dock. And they asked the question, what's the penalty? And they said X, Y, Z. They turned to the contractor in that meeting, said, build that dock starting Monday. So, okay, it has to be up to code. Who, what, why, where, how, what's the penalty?
So,
If the penalty is
we're not
less,
gonna get an occupancy permit.
who says you have to have one?
The insurance company.
You're not gonna jeopardize the safety of the
That's
firefighters.
what-
We're the ones we,
But that's
they
not the
need.
case at all, because
I can just see that conversation happening in a district meeting and
what's the
The whole
backstreet?
thing's gonna
You
go
say,
south.
you're not gonna
It's the state law.
jeopardize
It's the
this or
state
that.
code.
The fact that that code is in place is no guarantee that anyone there is quote-unquote safe.
all I,
Build buildings to
the
standards.
one piece of information that I need to see is wherever it's written, there's a statute or a code that we have to follow that says you have an existing structure that met code 20 years ago. And if you build something adjacent to it, you don't have to change this building. But if that new structure touches it, then you
It's in
have
there.
to.
There's a code for existing structures, there's a code for new ones, and there's probably some section, I can look, but I don't want
Right.
to spend 20 hours flipping through the books.
Right, but the contractor
It's there.
is gonna know that.
Yes.
He's gonna know what he was told by who? He's gonna go to an
The code.
official and say, do I have to do that? And the official is programmed to say,
No.
yes, you do.
So
No,
no,
the
state
architect
goes-
State
knows.
has accepted International Building Code 2018 version.
Right.
That's what the contractor has to do.
Right, so, and the contractor's, if you're not familiar with it, he's gonna go look and say, oh, we can touch the building and not have to bring this one up to code. But if we change 20% of what's in this building, we have to, or whatever it is.
Yeah, the architect is gonna know that, that's
Right.
what they do. They know the codes.
So
Or
that
their
would be
structural engineer,
I
or
think-
whomever.
handy piece of information to have.
Well, they're all gonna have to do it. Every one of them has to meet the code. So I don't think we can select a contractor based on any of this.
No, that's gonna be part of
Yes.
of this process that determines how this building is gonna look. At the end of the day, I think we all know that we need about a 14,000 square foot building. That's what we were gonna build over at Mansville Road.
That's total.
Yeah,
Total.
14, 15, it's in between 14 and 15.
And
Both
we-
buildings.
So can we add,
have,
if you want a cost component, can we ask for a conceptual cost, a cost to perform a conceptual plan and estimate for a 14,000 square foot building, single station?
We
Right.
have
Except-
5,000 down.
5,000.
we have 4,800 square feet right now.
Down.
Okay, but that's irrelevant. The total station will be 14,000, are you saying plus, we have to add that too?
No, I'm saying,
we only
we
need 10,000.
we already own 4,800 square feet. So subtract 4,800 from
That assumes
14,000.
that assumes that you're keeping the existing structure. I'm trying to say, if you want to add any kind of a cost comparison, be definitive in what you're asking the cost for. Otherwise, or did we already say we're not going to ask for
We already said we wanted to ask for.
cost? Done. quality-based
Take that
selection.
We're having a discussion that we don't need to have.
Yeah, sorry.
We'll have it later.
No, but
All right,
Kevin,
but and that's fine.
but Kevin asked a valid question, and that was, I think you didn't take it far enough, was, so if the contractor can confirm that as long as we don't touch the existing building, we don't have to update it, and we go, okay, then we're perfectly fine with setting the new building next to the existing building and not updating the existing building. All right, if that's the premise, the next question you didn't ask was, are the taxpayers gonna be in favor of that? That's the question. Or are they gonna look at it and say, no, you should integrate the existing building and bring the whole thing up to code, and, or that's a stupid idea because you're gonna run between two buildings, or whatever they're gonna ask.
Do you want to look at that for the next 50 years? You know,
But, you know, and that's the
So
difference
then
between
you're
having
asking,
somebody
then you're
building us a
asking your
10.
architect to provide two concepts
I don't
to
know
go to
how,
town meeting with.
I don't know how
And say,
you,
this one costs this and this one costs this. I don't know that you want the public making design decisions.
Some of them.
You just need to justify why we did or did not do something.
And that's, well, we're having conversations that we don't need to have.
But those are
So-
all of those things that, you know, in those meetings that you have, those public hearings that you're gonna have, you need to think of all these kind of things that the voters may be thinking about, and whether they ask them or not, you need to try to answer them before they get a chance to ask them, so that you can validate the reason why you're going down this road.
Agreed, but those are conversations that we'll have as we go through the design process.
That we're rapidly running out of time.
Right.
Because I'll bet if you ask any of these, they might not be able to provide you with what we need in time. So we'll,
you're gonna come up with one of these that
yeah, well,
you
this is
feel
a
like
start,
will
but,
fit our
yeah, it's a start.
situation?
I'll go through, yes. Yes. And so, does everybody, do we have everybody's email addresses?
if you've been emailed, has Beth emailed you anything?
Yes, she.
So it should have everybody's on there.
Okay, when
You
she
should just
did, when
reply
she
all.
did the
In
meeting.
the
minutes.
email that I sent out this morning, had everybody's on.
Okay, good enough.
And if I could figure out how to do it on my Outlook app, which is different than Outlook.
Oh, I hate that.
I would make
Outlook Express.
a group, but I don't know how to do that on it.
I got rid of my Outlook app because it was
Oh,
too
it's awful.
Well, my problem is that my loving daughter bought me a new laptop because she was tired of hearing me swear at my old one. And she bought me a Chromebook. It doesn't have-
Google. I hate Google.
As do I, but how do you look at her who, you know, worked her ass off to say what was right?
So now when you're frustrated, you just try not to swear in front of her.
Well, she's away at school, so, but it's when she comes back and she works for me, because it's at work. And I still have my old laptop sitting next to my Google one.
If you get a Chromebook, you're stuck with the Google Office applications. That will convert Word, but it's not the same.
Well, no, I use Word, but it's all apps. And it's not the same, like, I use QuickBooks for my accounting software, and I had QuickBooks on my laptop, and now I have to use QuickBooks online because
It's just a little bit different.
Oh, yeah.
Because you
That's
waited
right.
too long. I kept my old one and I just not, you're in a subscription, right?
Yes.
I hate subscriptions.
Meeting adjourned.
Is there any other business that we need to discuss prior?
Just one, as you all know, starting in May, golf season is here, and I will not be making Wednesday night meetings, so if you could consider changing it to like a Monday night, that would be great.
I think we're gonna have to,
Don't you have training Monday then?
Yes, but I don't have to go, the training officer takes care of that.
we're gonna need
I
to,
do.
He has to go to some of them, but not all of them.
Not all of them.
we're gonna need to, I think we're gonna need to look at when that the contractor and the applicant can be available as well. So this, they may not have been able to make Wednesdays.
Well, I think what we'll do, we'll pick a day to schedule interviews and we interview them all on the same day. Is that the plan?
Yes, but I mean going forward, so once we've chosen the contractor, they may say,
Oh,
well,
we'll pick a different.
we can't do Wednesdays at 5 o'clock. For these reasons. Well, let's go well. Yeah, both.
So
The
what's,
fifth Tuesday
what's
of
the
every
date
month.
we need to pick the contractor by? So we work back? Or just, let's get the criteria,
get this
next
down.
meeting, when's our next meeting? I guess that's
2 weeks from today.
Yes.
2 weeks from today.
Well, actually,
What is it? Well,
no.
Because we're off.
Yes,
because
it
of-
is 2 weeks from today.
That's 2 weeks from today. May 11th. No, April
13th.
April 13th.
Because it's the second, fourth Tuesday.
yep.
So it'd be,
Second, fourth
what our
Wednesday, not
objective
Tuesday.
will be at the next meeting is to finalize this
That should
and
be,
rate this
we should have that finalized prior to the
prior to the
meeting.
meeting. Okay.
Print it out, everybody does a final review and says, yes. And then we can, and then I think at the same meeting, we need to finalize what the interview questions are and a proposed schedule for interviews who can participate on. It doesn't, it may not be on Wednesday at 5 o'clock.
So when are we reviewing these together? Or we're all gonna do it individually and do a rating?
I think we should do it together.
Next meeting?
I think the next meeting will be busy trying to get this squared away. I know you want it to be done when we get to the meeting, but when everybody sits down, looks at it, and probably got questions, we will.
Well, let's, and I agree with the chief, I'm sure there'll be a great deal of discussion around that criteria, but let's leave it open that if we have time, because we plan on 2 hours for our meetings, then we can review those packets as a group. And hopefully everybody has reviewed them already. We've had them for
Yeah, what I've done in the past is everybody reviews it individually and puts their own scores in,
Yeah,
and then we come as a group and compare and discuss, and then come up with a final score. Sometimes you can average everybody's score, or you can, but again, there's people that are, who's part of the selection committee? Everyone on the building committee, or just,
yeah.
okay, so everybody has to review these and do their.
So what do you
The
guys
more
think
people
about,
that review, the harder it is to reach consensus.
what do you guys think? Well, there's not that many of us. Well, what do you guys think about that? Do you want, Kevin suggested doing it as a group. Lisa suggested that in the past she's done it, we individually, and then you come together and compare notes.
It's faster that way, at the meeting anyway. Because you're gonna, we're not gonna each go through each page here. But if you've already I've already got all my notes and things, and I can put, if everybody takes a stab at it, and then somebody says, well, why did you give them that score? You explain why you gave them that score. You might say, oh, you know what, you're right. That's what I want my score to be. Or you take everybody's, sometimes you can just put them all together and you've all come up with the same answer, and it's wonderful.
I don't have some of those books, so it'd be hard for me to,
We'll get you some, what do you need? So, I don't even know, I only have 2 of them. I never
yeah,
bought
I don't get the papers, I don't have any of those books.
And I didn't know if anybody turned it into a PDF somewhere, so we could email them out or
I
whatever.
thought that had been done. Not that you know. I thought I was talking with it, some.
We were talking about it at our last meeting for
We were gonna
Lisa.
scan them, someone was gonna scan them.
But I think you had extras that you handed to us.
I did.
But I have Milestone,
Okay, this one.
I asked Kathy, she didn't have any extras.
Yeah, so I got these three, right, yeah, this is all I got.
You got milestone, fulcrum, and
Shit, I don't have one of those. What is it?
The two that I did have, I did turn into PDF,
There, maybe?
which was one of these looped up ones.
I don't know them.
Yeah.
I turned into a PDF, and another one, I don't know, I can't remember
I
which
don't
one.
have a hundred,
and then you don't have,
and I don't have audit pages.
Yours?
No, that's yours. But I'm just thinking, so Kathy, I believe Kathy has
You don't have these two.
Fulcrum, Milestone, and Bound were emailed.
This one is PDF somewhere, because this was printed locally.
I have that in PDF, because I recognize it now. So Hunter and BTS, I turned into PDFs myself.
He
Okay.
needs that.
So he needs BPS and type.
Maybe just email the group chief, that way,
We all have the PDF.
yeah.
So the other three,
Kathy should have the other three.
Bowen?
Bowen, Milestone, and Fulcrum.
Which I have those three.
But how about all the other people on the, or is it just us?
It's still Derek and
Right,
John. John has them all.
John has them all, and Derek does too.
Milestone, Fulcrum, and Bowen, Kathy should have.
so, I know she didn't have them when I asked her. She said,
Oh.
she gave me these two.
How do
Because I
you,
thought those were emailed.
how do you take this and make it PDF?
I got a machine that does it.
Yeah,
If you give them to me, I'll turn it into a PDF tomorrow.
If
Perfect.
I give you these?
Yes,
All right, so I'm gonna give you these, but I want these back.
I'll give them back to you.
but the
Well,
one
he's
that,
gonna
the
email
one
it.
that's not there is the one that's bound, right?
I
Or
already
you already have that
I
one?
have
Okay.
that. So the PDFs tomorrow, read them out, email them out by the end of business. To everybody.
When does your schedule change? May?
Okay.
So we have April to figure out how to,
And next meeting, we ought to come up with a schedule and back into what we need by certain dates.
Right.
I'll find out the dates on public hearings for bonds. That'll give us kind of like where we need to be at a certain
We
date.
gotta,
We have to have a number by a certain date.
you're gonna ask the question of the attorney
I
in
have.
regards to,
And that too.
is there anything else for this evening? Meeting 7:02, I will call the meeting adjourned.